patience.
Yes.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yasodanandana Braja Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Brahmadakacharya Asadhara Sadushi Shiman His Divine Grace Shri Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hariva Slava Zabrani Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Gaurangi Om Agyanatamanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Prajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitam Sha Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudha Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Turvyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 4, Appearance of Sri Narada, Text 31. Kim va Bhagavata Dharma na prayena nirupita priya praramahangsanam Tadeva Yachuta Priya Kim va Bhagavata Dharma Na Prayena Nirupita Priya Paramahangsanam Tadeva Yachuta Priya Priya Paramahangsanam Tadeva Yachuta Priya. Ladies. Kimva Bhagavata Dharma Na Prayena Nirupita Priya Paramahangsanam Tadeva Yachuta Priya. Kimva or Bhagavata Dharma, devotional activities of the living beings. Not prayena, almost, nirupitaha, directed, priyaha, dear, paramahangsanam, of the perfect beings. Te eva, that also. He, certainly. Achyuta, the infallible. Priyaha, attractive. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. Purport. The dissatisfaction which was being felt by Srila Vyasadeva is expressed herein in his own words. This was felt for the normal condition of the living being in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus, when it is fixed in the normal condition of service, neither the Lord nor the living being can become fully satisfied. This defect was felt by him when Narada Muni, his spiritual master, reached him, is described as follows. As mentioned before, Narada, text 32, as mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna, Dvaipayana Vyas, on the bank of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. Purport: the vacuum felt by Vyasadeva was not due to his lack of knowledge. Bhagavad Dharma is purely devotional service to the Lord, to which the monist has no access. The monist is not counted amongst the Paramahamsas, the most perfect of the renounced order of life. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Although Vyasadeva was as empowered as divinity, he still felt dissatisfaction because in none of his works would the transcendental activities of the Lord properly explained. The inspiration was infused by Sri Krishna directly in the heart of Vyasadeva, thus he felt the vacuum as explained before. It is definitely expressed herein that without the transcendental loving service to the Lord, everything is void. But in the transcendental service to the Lord, everything is tangible, without any separate attempt at fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculation. So the last verse in the chapter. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. Purport: Vidi means Brahma, the first created living being. He is the original student of, as well as professor of the Vedas. He learned it from Sri Krishna and taught Narada first. So Narada is the second Acharya in the line of the spiritual disciple succession. He is the representative of Brahma, and therefore he is respected exactly like Brahma, the father of all vidis, regulations. Similarly, all other successive disciples in the chain are also equally respected as representatives of the original spiritual master. Let's end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhute Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Siddharane. Vyasadeva is feeling some dissatisfaction, and what to speak of ourselves. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has gone through a process of what happens when we're involved in contemplating objects of the senses, how we ultimately we lose our spiritual intelligence, and we remain in the bodily concept of life. And anyone in the bodily concept of life has a lot of problems, because the body is nothing but a series of different kinds of problems. It's a problem to go to sleep, it's a problem to wake up, it's a problem to do so many things. And yet if we can experience just a little relief from a problem, we think we're happy. But actually that's not real happiness. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nashti buddhya yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavanaha nacha bhavyantak shantir ashantasya kutak sukham. And the verse before that is Prasanna manasam yeva yoginam sukham uttamam paiti shantarajasam brahmabhutam akalmasha. It's not quite the verse before that, but it's close. Prasadav sarva dukhanam harayara yasra pujayate prasadam prasadam chetasa yasu buddhi paryavavitishtate. For one who is thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. It's a satisfied consciousness, one intelligence is soon well established. Prasade sarva dukhanam. In other words, if we're in bliss, because we're concentrating on the Supreme, therefore we won't be concentrated on this body, which is the source of all misery. it's not that the body will suddenly necessarily immediately become blissful, because the body may still be subjected to the threefold miseries, but instead of dwelling on the threefold miseries, we can dwell on the bliss, knowledge, and eternity of Krishna consciousness, which means to concentrate on Krishna, because he concentrates on the Supreme. Bhaya sparshe visaktatma vindanyatmini yat sukham sabrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. Such a person is not attracted to external objects or sense gratification because he enjoys the pleasure from within. In this way, because he concentrates on the Supreme. In this way, he enjoys unlimited happiness because he concentrates on the Supreme. Bhaya sparshe visaktatma vindanyatmini yat sukham sabrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. Such a person is not attracted to material sense objects, but is always entranced, enjoying the pleasure from within. In this way, the self-realized soul enjoys unlimited happiness because he concentrates on the Supreme. So that's our aim, to develop the ability to concentrate on the Supreme, not for a few seconds, but forever. Therefore, tesham satatam yuktanam bhajantam prati purvakam didami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upiyantite. To those who are constantly devoted, if you put the iron in the fire and keep it there, then it'll get hotter and hotter and hotter, then it'll become like the fire. But if you keep on taking the iron out, then it's just going to cool down. And you may put it back, it gets hot, and then you take it out, it cools down. So we never really experience what it's like to be concentrated on the Supreme, because we never keep our consciousness sufficiently steady in Krishna consciousness to actually experience what Krishna is like. Of course, we can use the analogy, or Krishna gives the analogy, Yataidam so samrido ganira bhasma sakru terjana ganagni sarvakarmani bhasma sakru kurute tata. As the blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, so does the fire of transcendental knowledge burn to ashes all the reactions of our previous activities. So right now, whether we're conscious of it or not, we're surrounded by the reactions of our previous activities. In the form of, our consciousness is unclear because our minds are unclear. They're clouded due to our past activities. But Krishna also says the senses, mind, and intelligence are the sitting places of lust. So not only our minds are clouded, but our intelligence is clouded, our senses are clouded, we're living in a cloud of illusion on all levels. So therefore, when we try to concentrate on the Supreme, we may have the good fortune, by Krishna's mercy, experience something of Krishna consciousness, but then we encounter our material attachments from time immemorial in terms of lust, anger, greed, illusion, forgetfulness, bewilderment of intelligence, etc. And therefore, we don't get a full taste of Krishna consciousness, but even a little taste is. Prabhupada said if you light a match in a dark room, the darkness can't put the match out. So just a little bit of experience of Krishna consciousness means that we have hope that there's more to come, that there's a bright future. But I have to take to the path to get to the bright future. So the bliss of Krishna consciousness is compared to a fire that burns away the ashes, material, burns the ashes, the coverings that we find ourselves under, that cause us to misidentify ourselves with our gross and subtle bodies. And the process is machita machkata prana bodhiyantas purashpuram katayantas shvam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. That the thoughts of my pure devotees, they dwell in me, their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss by enlightening one another and conversing about me. So it begins with hearing about Krishna, but not just hearing about Krishna's pastimes, which we mostly don't have very much access to. It's hearing about how we can actually become Krishna conscious, how we can give up our materialistic tendencies towards sense gratification by regulating the senses, engaging them in Krishna's service, and therefore gradually become eligible to become conscious of at least Krishna's name. Sometimes devotees want to jump right into the pastimes. But if we can't hear the name, how are we going to hear the pastimes? If you can't lift 20 kilos, how are you going to lift 2,000? So we have to first of all learn how to hear the name and how to chant the name of Krishna, Radha and Krishna, with some feeling that we want to engage in their loving service, so therefore we have to practice loving devotional service. In other words, do our service with some consistency, some enthusiasm, and therefore develop also loving relationships with the devotees, an attitude of service. When we see a devotee, now we think, how can I engage you in my service? Thank you for appearing before me. I have so many things for you to do for me. No, that kind of attitude will not really be very helpful for our advancement in Krishna consciousness. We may get service, but that service will oblige us to pay back that service in the future. It's simply business. But if we engage in loving service, then we don't have to worry about having to pay anyone or having to be paid back by anyone. If our service is not loving, then it's a business, and we have to get the reward for it. If you give in charity a big donation to a spiritual organization with the idea of getting some return, then the result is you have to come back in the next lifetime to get the return. Which means you have to come back, you have to be in the womb of a mother, hopefully it's a human mother, for 9 months. Then you have to take birth, you have to grow baby teeth. They have to fall out or be pulled out. They have to go to school and learn 1 + 1 is 2 again, sit in for so many tests and all sorts of things. You have to go through the whole process. Finally get your reward, you get paid back for the donation you gave. Is it really worth all the trouble? Therefore, only if we're engaging in loving service, and loving service means that we have a consciousness that everything here belongs to Krishna, including my own body. I belong to Krishna. And therefore there's nothing to gain here. That's revealed as we back up. Yanena tu tadaganam yesham nashitamatmanaha tesham adityavaj jnanam prakashiti tatparam. When, however, one is enlightened with the nescience, with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, just like the sun lights up everything in the daytime. In other words, the more we become conscious of Krishna, the more we become enlightened with what actually is reality. And in order to do that, even if we get a little bit of consciousness of Krishna, then what is that supposed to inspire us? Tad buddhiyas, tad atmanas, tad nishtas, tad parayanaha, gajatnya pana avritim, jnana niduta kalmasha. Owen's buddhi, first of all, the buddhi, when our intelligence, we have to always try to see things in relation to Krishna consciousness. If we see things in relation to Krishna consciousness, then we'll be inspired to utilize our things in Krishna's service. So without a consciousness, without a vision of what Krishna consciousness is, there won't be any inspiration to engage in Krishna's service. Now, the inspiration may not always be that we're rolling on the ground in ecstasy. We just can't wait to do something for Krishna. But at least we have the intelligence that this is for my benefit. This is the best thing I could do right now, is do something for Krishna. It may be painful, it may be ecstatic, but anyhow, I should do it anyhow. Either way, I'm going to be benefited. Sad tad buddhas tad atmanas. That's the self. Actually, atma means the body, and atma means the mind. Atma means the soul. And here it's, which is, atma is translated as Atma here is translated as minds. Minds are always fixed in the Supreme. Now we may think, well, I have so many things to do and I have some... No, if we're actually doing something for Krishna, then we'll have a sense of Krishna consciousness at least. If we're trying to see things in relation to Krishna, then how can we forget Krishna? How can our minds not be in Krishna? And if what we're doing is service to Krishna, then it's much more likely, or it's only possible in that way, that our minds will be fixed in Krishna consciousness. Tad buddhyas, tad atmanas, tad nishta. Then our faith. We may have strong faith, we may have weak faith, but if we follow the process, our nishta, as it says here, nishta. Because faith is only meant for the Supreme. In other words, there's a state of consciousness where we're steadily engaged in Krishna's service, and therefore, even some thought comes to our mind, we ignore it. We realize that this is not the best path to follow. Let me keep on with what I'm doing in Krishna's, remembering Krishna, serving Krishna, seeing things in Krishna consciousness, and not become bewildered by other ideas. That's the state of nishta. So we may not be on that state. Still, Krishna says, what's that verse before? Shanai shanaru paramad buddhya drita grihitaya atma samstamana kritva na kinchit api chintaya. Shnai Shanar Uparamad Buddhya Driti Grihitaya Atma Samstamana Kritva Na Kinchit Apichintaya. Shnai Shanar. Wherever the mind wanders due to its Shnai Shanar. Therefore, step by step with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained with full conviction. And that's the mind should think of the self alone and nothing else. So these are verses that really meant for contemplation. And if we actually contemplate the verse and understand it, then our life will become devotional. It's as easy as that. In other words, everyone here is equipped with what's being talked about. Buddhi, intelligence, Shanai, Shanara, Uparama, Buddhya, Drita, and determination. Grihitaya, to grab hold of these things. Atma samsta, we also have a soul. We are the soul. Atma samsta manakritva. Manakritva, we have a mind. Na kinchit apichintaya. So, we have these things already. Now we have to utilize them in Krishna's service. Now we'll be surprised because we think about utilizing these things in Krishna's service, we'll discover we have them. If we don't use them in Krishna's service, we may not even know we have these things. You think a materialist knows what spiritual determination is? He has no idea. He knows what material determination is because he's following his senses. He's determined at any cost to serve his senses. Whatever the risk, whatever the consequences, he's going to serve his senses. But spiritual determination is something different. It's at any cost, at any risk, I'm going to serve Krishna. So that takes intelligence to understand Krishna's reality and the benefit of serving Krishna at any circumstance. Like Jatayu, He knew he was not going to win against Ravana. Still, he fought to the best of his ability to protect Sita. And he was fully rewarded by Lord Ramachandra, so that Lord Ramachandra personally embraced Jatayu and performed his funeral ceremony himself personally. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there at your funeral and does it himself personally, you know you've done something good. Sad Shanai Uparamad. Does anyone know what Uparamad means? I don't even know what it means. Uparamad. One should hold back. So gradually, step by step, Buddhya by intelligence, Drita Grihitaya, carried by conviction, place in transcendence, Manak, making Kinchit even. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, sustained by full conviction, thus the mind should be fixed to the self alone and should think of nothing else. So the same thing is explained in the previous chapter, in the second chapter. A little bit more detail on what is the process. The verse number 71 of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Does anyone know what 70? 70. What is verse 70 in the Bhagavad Gita? That's right, good. Apuryamana machala pratishtam samudram apa pravishnati yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishnati sarve seshantim apnoti nakama kami. Person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is always being filled but is always still, can alone attain peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So that's why we have this morning class. That's why we have the morning program, not only the class. The whole program is to recharge our batteries in Krishna consciousness, to fill the pond of our mind with devotional desire, with Krishna consciousness. So that during the day, when we're engaged in our activities, and we have choices, am I going to do this for Krishna, or am I going to do something in Krishna consciousness, or am I going to do something to waste my time? What am I going to do? And if our consciousness is filled up in Krishna, then it's much more likely that during the day when we have a choice, we'll decide to do something for Krishna. And let the other thoughts that are ready to deviate us, to distract us from Krishna consciousness, just flow by. Then that's determination, but it's sustained by intelligence with full conviction. It's not just an artificial attempt to abandon sense gratification. It's just understanding that there's a higher experience, a higher taste. It may not be there immediately, but we can look forward to it if we follow the proper process. Visha vinivartante niraharasi dehinam rasavarjam isopyasya param drishma nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, one remains fixed in consciousness. So it's that higher taste of becoming conscious of Krishna that we're looking for. And it's experienced especially when we start giving up the tendency to become distracted by material consciousness, by material activities, by material conceptions of life, etc. When we don't become distracted by them, then we can concentrate our mind upon Krishna with devotion, with feelings of trying to please Him, doing it to please Him, becoming dovetailed with His mission, with His desires, with His purposes. We become an instrument for Krishna, rather than an instrument to gratify our senses for our own selfish pleasure. We have a higher purpose in life other than just to look forward to the next meal and hopefully a comfortable warm bed. But Shanai Shanara, Krishna indicates it's gradually. It may not happen at once, but it should happen. Not that we hear the class, we go through the program, and we look in our heart and see how much Krishna consciousness we got during the whole time, and we're on empty still. There's no gas in the tank. We're running on fumes. Therefore, we should try to take seriously the program so that during the day we're not running on fumes. We look into our tank of Krishna consciousness and it's below empty, and all we can hear is the gears are just screeching. Shinari Shimaru Paramit. So one should hold back. The tendency to try to act according to our material desires. We can't stop them from appearing. That would be a waste of time. But we can hold back the desire to serve them, to fulfill them, and look and pray to Krishna for some better engagement than materialistic activities. Then buddhya driti, but by such intelligence, then grihitaya, carried by conviction. Our intelligence and our conviction can carry us toward atma samsara, keeping the mind on Krishna. Then we'll become blissful, and that bliss will burn away the tendency to act materialistically. We can't fulfill our material desires and expect to make any progress. Of course, we're making progress. It's not that we're always just fulfilling our material desires, but there is tendencies since time immemorial to fulfill our material desires, but we have to gradually try to give them up by engaging, by becoming aloof from them, not getting distracted by them, and then focusing more on our service, filling the gaps in our service, filling the gaps in our understanding, filling the gaps in our attitude, filling the gaps in our mind, and filling them more and more with Krishna consciousness. During the program, and then even during the day, eventually we'll be filling ourselves up with Krishna consciousness, so that when we perform the program in the morning, that we're full of Krishna consciousness and we're ready to receive more of it. So Vyasadeva was devoid. He was on empty. He was flying on fumes. His gas was, there's nothing to run on. What's that? Fumes is like, when you smell gas, that's fumes. Can't run very far. You can't drive very far on fumes. So one can't advance very much in Krishna consciousness if we don't fill ourselves with Krishna's thoughts of Krishna and desire to serve Krishna, to put into practice service to Krishna. So Vyasadeva he had understood that he's not this body. That's the Vedic literature, Varnashram Dharma, brings one to that point. But nashti buddhi yuktasya, nacha yuktasya bhavanaha, nacha bhavinyatak shantira ashantasya kutak sukham. For one who's not in the divine consciousness or Krishna consciousness can have neither controlled mind nor steady intelligence, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? In other words, if our intelligence is not seeing things in Krishna's service, in Krishna consciousness, if we're not seeing others in relationship to Krishna, we're not seeing this world in relationship to Krishna, then our intelligence will be flickering from one idea to the next. He's my friend, he's my enemy, I can enjoy this person will be harmful to me, etc. Our intelligence will not be very clear. We won't know who's a friend, who's an enemy, etc. But if our consciousness is seeing things in Krishna's service, in Krishna consciousness, then it's much more likely Krishna will give us the proper understanding in Krishna consciousness. Then our minds can actually be filled with Krishna. if we don't have a determination to serve Krishna, then our minds will not be filled up with Krishna consciousness either, real Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Shnai Shnara Paramad Buddhya Drita Grihitaya Atma Samstamana Kritva Nakinche Api Chintaya. Wherever the mind wanders to, due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one should withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So we won't always be successful, but if we see we're not successful, our minds are wandering to the wrong places, then we bring it back and put it back, try to follow the process. But we have to know what the process is. If we know what the process is, we won't know how to bring it back into Krishna consciousness again. And therefore we may, out of anxiety or fear or whatever, start trying to think about Krishna, but then the mind will wander again. So we have to learn how to develop determination. That's why the 4 regular principles are there. That's why we have a regulated life in Krishna consciousness, sadhana bhakti, to develop that spiritual determination, that spiritual wisdom, so that we can constantly keep on putting our minds back on Krishna through the process of seeing how everything here belongs to Krishna, always being under the guidance of Krishna's representatives, always taking shelter of Krishna's representatives with the help of the super soul, understanding what they're telling us and taking shelter of them, and doing whatever we're doing in the attitude of doing it with care and attention to please Krishna, doing it as nicely and as feelingly as possible, with full intelligence, with full feeling, doing whatever we're doing to please Krishna. In other words, give it 100% rather than 10% or 20%. Then the result is that Krishna will reciprocate with us. And Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, he'll give us intelligence. And when we utilize that intelligence more and more, then when the mind is concentrated on Krishna, then Tesham Eva Nukampartam. Then Krishna will give us his compassion and we'll feel Krishna's presence more and more and become ecstatic and see and become more and more under Krishna's direction. And therefore having no more problems because Krishna will arrange everything very nicely for our life here in the material world as well as our spiritual advancement. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna. It is mentioned that now anattanivritti level devotee is supposed to think like devotee, and on nishta level devotee is supposed to feel like devotee. And what you mentioned during the lecture, and I like you to confirm that, is that vision what's mean to feel like devotee, what is level of nishta? That is basically my question, because I don't know, I don't have vision what's mean to feel like devotee.
Well, obviously, the higher the devotional attainment, the more we'll feel like a devotee, because we'll realize who we are. Now at the stage of Nishta, I mean at any stage one can feel devotional. We don't have to wait till Nishta, at any point. It's just at Nishta we constantly feel, more consistently feel devotional. But before that, without having some feeling of devotion, we don't make any progress towards Nishta. Just like we were told in Vaidhi Bhakti at the beginning, we should chant a certain number of rounds. So we feel like a servant, the person who told us. So that feeling is devotional. We may not be rolling on the ground, but we have that feeling of being a servant of Krishna. That's why we do our service. So that's also a feeling that we're a devotee. We don't think we're Dracula or Frankenstein or a playboy or something. We feel that we're Krishna's servant. That's devotional. Anything else? Hvala Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.